வாழ்க்கை பாதையிலே சர்வ சாதாரணமாக பார்க்கின்ற ஜீவன்களில் நானும் ஒருவன். போலிச்சாமியார் வேடமணிந்து காலித்தனம் செய்தேன். வாஸ்து சாஸ்திரம் என்ற பெயரில் நாஸ்தி செய்தேன். உடான் சாமியாரை உதைத்தேன். குற்றம் சாட்டப்பட்டிருக்கிறேன். இப்படியெல்லாம்.
What's the purpose of humor? I know you're thinking, well, duh, to make us laugh. True, but jokes come in a whole variety of genres. Like slapstick, dark comedy, comedy of errors, amongst other things. They all want to make you laugh, but also try to achieve a little beyond that. Personally, for me, the kind of humor that works, the one that makes me laugh, but also second later, think. Which is usually not the purpose of jokes, right? People don't like to think. You provide them with an opinion that's opposing theirs, their biases will jump in and the discussion will derail. Thinking makes them nervous and afraid. Humor, though, puts them at ease. The two together can be quite interesting.
You don't see color. So what do you do at a traffic lights? I don't believe in that at all. When people say that, there's nothing wrong with seeing color. It's how you treat color that's more important.
Humor is a fantastic tool to take forward opinions, especially commentary that questions powerful institutions, practices, and people. Most often, what people would find as boring lectures can become effective tools to put forth arguments when it comes from a point of humor. The ability to make fun and ridicule governments, rituals, and beliefs is a necessity for any society that is truly democratic.
Your God is the one true God. That would mean Allah is not the one true God, which we know He is. Don't you see, your logic eats itself.
We idealize our politicians, keep them on a pedestal, and believe that they could do no wrong. This kind of thought is dangerous. It's important that we keep all institutions vulnerable to ensure power is balanced at the end of the day. Satire and parody, to be more specific, have been torchbearers of testing our freedom of expression and bringing in dialogue to important matters. In an incredibly traditional and conservative film industry like ours, satire is far and few, but when delivered right, it has an impact that no news channel or political speech does. The works of Manivannan along with Satyraj are held in high regard for the same reason. His Amaidi Pade is quite the classic even today. Apart from him, I saw one comedian who made his work impactful along similar lines. I'll attempt to explain what about Vivek made him perhaps one of the best Indian comedians in the late 90s and through the 2000s. True, he did wane off towards the end, but I'd like to focus on the period starting in 2000 where he beautifully used satire and parody to make comedy that made one think.
Siri. Siri, Siri, Siri. Siri. Siri, Siri, Siri.
It was the turn of the century and his humor reflected that. He represented a young futuristic individual stuck in a society that's still in the past. One who was educated and exposed to progressive ideas, global cinema and scientific thinking. Vivek initially got into the Kollywood scene as a scriptwriter for K. Balachandar. The experience laid foundation for when he had to write dialogue for his own tracks. Which brings me to an interesting aspect of Tamil and Indian cinema, independent comedy tracks. Vivek found a way to get himself to flow with the script. For starters, he got himself into a great position as a quintessential hero's friend. Thereby, quite often, he never had to break himself away from the plot to get his jokes across. Even when he did, there was usually a thematic connection with what the movie tried to tell us. He was always relevant in a movie. His popularity basically soared, so much so that he started finding a spot in the posters alongside top heroes. Movies began casting him just to get a better reach. He used the voice that now he had and employed satire and parody to take forward his opinions on society, politics, education, superstitions, equality, filmmaking, its tropes, pretty much everything that he could lay his eyes on. According to him, this started with the movie Tirunelveli. He was asked to do a comedy track, and when he noticed that the main plot had to do with caste conflicts, he decided to run his track along the same lines. One look at the movie will remind you of all his characters that followed.
ஏண்டா பள்ளி சொன்னா கேக்குறீங்க, பூனை குறுக்க போனா அவசரம்ங்கறீங்க, காக்கா கத்துறா கஸ்ட் வருதுங்கறீங்க, ஒரு மனுஷன் காட்டு கத்து கத்துற கேட்க மாட்டேங்கறீங்களடா.
Vivek usually places himself as a sole voice of reason in social groups like cities, villages, families, colleges and friend groups. That does great to depict the herd mentality and follies of the same. As a society, we are one that holds beliefs because, well, those are the beliefs our community holds. We fear to detract from the group even when it begins to impact our own lives. Like in Sami, where he might be a religious person but does not stand for unfair and silly extrapolations by the followers of a particular religion.
ஏண்டா இப்படி மூட நம்பிக்கையில மூழ்கி கிடக்கிறேள்?
In Kadal Sadugudi, he explores outdated practices in villages.
மேனகா காந்திக்கு தெரிஞ்சா புடிச்சிட்டு போயிடுவாங்கடா. நல்ல வேலை கேட்டா கொடுத்துற வேண்டியதுதான்.
In Tirutuppailai, he picks his problems with stereotypical plots and serials. In Alli Thandavanam, he expresses his woes about Tamil's dying usage. In Chinu, he takes his shots at the supposedly innovative approach of new music directors.
Oh father, oh grandfather, grandpa. யாரப்பா நீங்களா?
Like I said, I could keep going on. He may come across as preachy, but his humor does not come from a point of superiority. An ability to produce witty remarks helps in debates and discourse, and therefore Vivek thrives in them. Quite often, just the naysay or insult might not figure as humor with our society, one that is quick to take offense. So he mixes his punches quite often with hyperboles, puns, simple wordplays that make the language of humor more accessible and digestible.
உங்களுடைய இயர்லி ஹேங் ஓவர் எவ்வளவு?
What?
இல்ல இது இயர்லி டர்ன் ஓவர்.
Now, when we look at his humor closely, it doesn't go unscathed. For someone who takes social commentary upon himself, he's quite often seen stereotyping and typecasting. In most cases, women.
ஒன்ன மாதிரி பொம்பளைங்க இருக்கிறதுனால தான் நாட்டுல ஜவுளி கடைக்கு வெளியில பிளாஸ்டிக் சேர்ல வெயிட்டிங்ல இருந்தே பல புருஷங்க லைஃபே வீணா போகுது.
He did persist views that are overall progressive when it comes to gender and how we perceive love, but he falls prey to deeply conditioned attitudes that at the face of it seemed harmless back then. Today we know its problems. It's easy to dismiss him off as a product of his time. But even if we don't do that, it's okay to disagree with someone who you admire. It's important to recognize faults and move towards correcting those, but also important to not be dismissive of the other opinions one might hold. Something Vivek also stands by. In scenarios where ideologies clash, his jokes are about both parties and where each of them falter. Quite often, his characters believe in the right things, but they end up being the loser. He's either completely disregarded or seen as a fool for holding such beliefs. Being the loser of the scenario or the butt of the joke means it's tough to get offended by him. His commentary may be something you disagree with, but he is the joke, so you're not offended.
என்ன சாமி கோனார் தமிழ் ஒரு இலை படிக்கேன், டேபிள் மெஸ்ல சாப்பிட்டேன், நாயர் கடையில டீ குடிச்சேன், நாயர் கடையில மளிகை வாங்கினேன், செட்டியார் வீட்ல கடை வாங்கினேன்.
என்ன சாமி சாதி இல்லனா நாங்க எப்படி நம்புவோம்?
ஆஹா என்னையவே சிந்திக்க வச்சுட்டானே.
This works particularly well when his tracks explore the conflicts between youth and the previous generations, like in Run or Kadal Sarugudu. He has a problem with their age-old staunch beliefs, but those beliefs did make sense at one point of time, and his youthful arrogance dismisses them completely. His character ends up paying the price for that. In our modern world of rage and offense, satire can easily die out, but it's important we do not let it. It strips away power from institutions and gives it to the truth. It is an attempt to provide insight into society, its functionings, and ridiculing its silliness, but with an intention to improve it and make it better. Yes, jokes are provoking, but quite often, like political cartoonist Patrick Shepard puts it, they're thought-provoking. I'd like to think of his characters something like Don Quixote, a fool who's not in touch with the rest of society. Perhaps a fool because he's not in touch with the rest of society. Let's not forget though, Don Quixote is considered to be the greatest modern novel.